It is my absolute pleasure to introduce or reintroduce, for those of you who know him already, Dr. Robert Taylor. Dr. Taylor is a professor in the School of Social Work here at the University of Michigan. He's also the director for the Program for Research on Black Americans at the Institute for Social Research, and he is one of the co-directors, co-founding directors actually, of MIWI several years ago. And so he has been through the promotion and tenure process as a participant and as an evaluator, and he has a lot of experience that he's going to be able to share with us today. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Taylor, and I'm looking forward to what you have to share with us today. So please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Brianna. Okay. So let me just tell you what we're doing today. So the main thing is I'm going to talk about, again, how to get tenure and the whole process. And it's not just, I'm not going to just talk about the tenure process in terms of when, like when you're in your 5th year, 6th year going up for tenure. I'm going to talk about, again, as we see here, 1st years as an assistant professor. Again, this happens especially to a lot of minority professors, is that you get on campus, and because there's so few other minority professors, everybody asks you to give talks. And you get this psychological reward for giving these small on-campus presentations. But also, presentations don't matter much in terms of tenure. And in most places, they don't matter at all. They matter a little bit at some of the smaller institutions. So in terms of being a citizen, what I mean by citizen, I'm talking about the service. You want to be good, maybe average, but you really don't want to be a great citizen, okay? Because there's unfortunately no reward for being a great citizen. This is one of the biggest things is you try to position yourself for tenure anywhere. So there's positioning yourself for tenure at your institution versus positioning yourself for tenure anywhere, okay? And you can see that those are 2 different goals. This is what you want to do. And that's what I mean by that is if you position yourself for tenure only at your institution, there may be citizen type things that you do that your institution may care about. But if you don't get tenure, it hurts you trying to get tenure other places. What I mean is something like starting a new program. So starting a new joint PhD program with another unit is the kind of thing that an assistant professor should not be doing. So there's some research on looking at junior professors who are extremely successful and the things they have in common. And we're not saying that you should do all of these things. We're just saying these are some of the things that they have in common that you may want to think about. So again, limit classroom prep, making sure that people write every day, spending time to discuss and your researching and teaching, and integrate research into teaching. Again, some cases that may not be possible depending upon your institution. Other things for successful new mentors, new professors, having multiple mentors, publish an article from their dissertation, reasonable amount of service, and spending more time writing research than conducting research. And as I said, if you have a question, Brianna, if there's a question, feel free to break in if there's something from the chat. You want to meet with students a reasonable amount of time, but not too much time. This is especially tough if you're a young professor and you're dealing with postdocs who may be the same age as you or students who are the same age as you. You want to make sure you set these appropriate boundaries. So any questions at this point? I'll just move into something else.
Can you speak more on, this is Crystal Brown, Drexel University. Can you speak more on more time writing research than conducting research?
Yes, I always argue with my psychology colleagues because psychology professors spend a lot of time conducting research. Um, and they always feel that they need to have something in the field. And there is something important about that, but in the same way, what gets you tenure is what you produce, not what you are in the process of producing. And so you want to make sure that you're writing and you're publishing as opposed to simply conducting research. And I shouldn't have said simply conducting. I just want you to understand the difference between the two. And those are big differences. Conducting research is a process. Having something published is the product of that work. So,
Robert, there's one more question. Could you speak to on preventing student drama, especially with undergraduate students?
that's always a tough one. It's really more about the professor, again, setting boundaries, making sure you don't making sure that uh, um, that you don't hang out, say, with postdocs, as an example, with senior graduate students who are all around the same age, because then you easily get pulled into that drama. Sometimes it may not be the most fun times of your career if you are 28, as an example, or 30, and the students and postdocs and your peer group is also around the same age, and you're sort of lonely. However, you just cannot be pulled into that drama. That's just the kind of thing that I'm not gonna say be a killer to your career, but it can have some serious negative ramifications. Okay, I'll move on. Um, so Tanya, you want to check and see the standards of your department of your school. As example, look at the videos of people who recently received or denied tenure. That will give you an idea, a rough idea, but that'll give you an idea of who's been successful and who's not been successful. Again, prepare for tenure anywhere, not just your institution, and be prepared to leave if necessary. That's your biggest bargaining chip is your leaving. So here's the combination of things that people are looking for in terms of tenure. Then nobody can ever give you a number because the numbers change. Research changes. So these are some basic ones. A combination of number of peer-reviewed journal articles, the quality of the journal, the number of articles, number of authors per paper, number of first author, sole author, and again, in the main journals of your field. It's that combination. That is the combination that people are looking for. And it again, it varies by your school, by your by the R1 versus R2, but these are the basic things. Grants alone for most places won't get you tenure, but articles alone can get you tenure. However, again, you need grants if you fit the profile of person who should get grants. Because then people say, well, this is a person who does cancer research. There's a lot of money in cancer, and this person doesn't have grants. What's happening here? And obviously, if you're in medicine and public health, your department that indicates it's a requirement, then obviously you do need to have some level of grant production. Brianna, just a quick question for you. What do you think about the grants?
I think that I think it's the scariest part about sort of the early stages of a career. In part because they take so much effort to get out the door. We typically have very little training in this as part of the doctoral training, and often even as a postdoc, you may not have a lot of opportunity to write grants. And most places, well, not in my experience, are not always direct
Yeah.
in how important they are. So for example, I remember interviewing at a job once, and I asked somebody, I said, what do you think would have happened to you if you hadn't gotten that K award? And because at the time, in my mind, I was going to a place, I was going to write a career development award. These are 4 to 5 year awards. This was going to kind of this was going to cover most of my effort. And then I was going to write this R01, right? So that was in my mind, the idea that I had. And nobody could really answer that question for me. And even when I asked the chair often, I said, what if I'm not successful at obtaining a career development award? Because people will say things like, well, we expect you to have a vigorously funded, externally supported research program or something. Like they'll use adjectives that don't align with a very, like, do I need an R01? Do I need multiple R01s? Like, as another R level grant, like an R21, would that be acceptable? So I think that's this part that is frustrating. I think that places, so for example, at my institution, the language that we use is a major grant. And we specifically do not consider a career development award or a K series sufficient for promotion, because that is a grant that is considered a mentored award. And we even though it's very difficult to get, we don't consider it as evidence of a independent, externally funded research program. It is externally funded, but it is not independent. So great question, Emily. How is that major grant is not well defined. I did not have an R01 when I came here at the University of Michigan with tenure. I had previously obtained tenure at my prior institution. But they could, when I came in with tenure, which was part of my negotiation here, because I already had it at a medical school. They considered, I had a large grant from the American Diabetes Association, about $1 million year grant, or sorry, $1 million grant. So the total kind of award cost. And that was a magic number for here. That appeared to be a number that made sense to them as a major award. So it was considered the same, the R01 equivalent is sort of the language that sometimes places will use. So, but that could be from a major foundation. So the American Cancer Society, the American Heart Association, for example, those places have kind of career development level awards. They also have kind of pilot level or R03 level awards, and then they have these larger awards. And so the evidence that they were looking for was that having one of these larger awards.
And again, I think it really varies. I think that public health, there's with where Brianna is, especially epidemiology, is much more likely to push grants than say psychology, and definitely more than sociology. And I think social work will push grants more than say sociology, as an example. So each field is a little bit different. And it's important to know that, again, that's what we talked about, reviewing vitas of people who recently got promoted and people who recently got denied tenure. So these are things to start off. I mean, even right now, even if you've already gotten tenure in terms of full professor. So develop a list of 10 or more names of potential reviewers as soon as you can. Okay. And then run that list of names by other people. So with this, when I say run that list name by your mentors, and they will say, oh yeah, that's a good letter writer. Oh no, that person always writes negative letters. There may be things like that they know. You want to meet these people at conferences, okay? Yes, in a professional setting. Again, don't write with them, but if you decide, yeah, I want to write with them, understand that you'll have to take them off your list because now you're collaborating with them. Okay. Nothing wrong with that. We can sort of understand this.
I just want to emphasize that point there, Robert. I've been at institutions where this was sort of not a big deal, but here it is a really big deal. So we consider two levels of letter writers, and I guess these are hugely important. At least at this institution, your letter writers are hugely important. In my experience, this is the thing that makes the difference between a successful or unsuccessful case. We consider people who were either nominated by the person, as we kind of downweight them relative to people who are identified independently by the department, for example, right? So if I think, oh, you tell me based on your CV that you're an expert in cancer disparities, I'm going to go ask the people at the cancer center here who are the best people in the field of cancer disparities, and those are the people I'm going to ask to evaluate your dossier. And you may put some of those people on your list too, but you don't want to put too many of those people because you want me to, as the committee member, to identify them. So you should have in your mind, who are the best people in my field? And you want them to know your name, but as Robert said, you should not write with them, because if you write with them, they will typically be excluded from the list of people that could even write you a letter. And you also want to be, if your place has a system like the University of Michigan, at least in my department does, where there's both people you nominate to be a letter writer and people that the department nominates, that your list is not fully encompassing. That is, you have left off some very obvious names because the department should identify those people.
And again, I think that varies. As we said, I think here, I haven't been on the committee in a while. I should ask my wife, who's been on the committee. We value letters by both whether the school or department nominates them versus the individual. We treat them pretty much the same. But every place, again, every unit is different. Tips for choosing reviewers. So again, you want peer institutions. So if you're a Big Ten school, as an example, or I'm sorry, if you're Michigan, you want other Big Ten schools, maybe Ivy League, but not schools like Eastern Michigan or Bowling Green or Toledo. You only want to choose one person per institution, though they never tell you that, but that's really critical. So if you have, say, 3 people from Harvard, I'm giving Harvard as an example, they'll only consider 2 of those letters. You don't want to travel too much. You have to travel some as an assistant professor. And let me sort of take a step back. If you travel a lot, it slows down your research, but it does help out your visibility. And visibility is really important in this field. However, productivity is also really important. So you have to figure out where that balance is. Obviously, endowed chairs mean a bit more than in terms of your potential reviewers over full professors and full professors over associate professors. When you are, these are the people who nobody's ever told you, they won't say this, but these are people who they will discount letters, or we would even say they're ineligible, which is an assistant professor writing a tenure letter for another assistant professor, obviously. New associate professors, you just got tenure in the last 2 or 3 years, though I've heard of people being asked to write those types of letters. The dissertation chair, your committee members, and people you work with also are not eligible to be potential reviewers. Tenure statement. Statement alone won't get you tenure, but a bad statement, marginal case, really makes it more difficult. Statements are really important for the letter writers, okay? Again, the tenure statement should be written for those who are going to review the portfolio. And it just makes it easier to write a supportive letter. That is a big deal. I can write a much better letter because you made it easier for me because the statement is better, okay? Makes it so much easier to write a letter. Good statement stays away from process, focuses on results and products. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I see, especially in my field of social work. When you're writing your statement, at some point you're going to ask other people to write it, but you have to remember one thing: it's your statement. So at some point you have to say, "This is what I want," because you can have too many cooks. This is an example. When you're buying a car, what do you want to hear? What's the information that's the most important? It's not how the car was built. Was the car built in Chicago or Mexico and then brought up from Chicago? These aren't details that are relevant for your for you when you want to purchase a car. Same type of deal. Again, sort of restating the same thing. Concentrating your findings, importance, contribution. Make it easy to write letters. I'll let you read this. This is a poor example. Do you see why this is a poor example? It is all process. It is absolutely all process. If I'm writing a letter, there's nothing I can use from this paragraph to help me. And when I say write a letter, if I'm the reviewer and I'm writing a tenure letter, there's none of this is helpful. Here's a good example. And one thing that I do and that I didn't do in the past is I will almost write tenure statements. And when I edit and help other people, I write them as if I'm writing a grant proposal. So the things that I include now, and again, some institutions love this, some hate it. But you see right here, if you notice, I bolded because I want to draw your eyes to that point. And that's the point that I want you to write up when you write your letter. For me, this is the most important point here of this paragraph. This is another bad example, which essentially just tells you how to do fixed effect regression models, which is not helpful. The same way, this is another one. And again, this is, if you notice, we have bolded some things here. Again, study has several unique advantages, is both positive and negative. Relationship satisfaction among cohabiting adults. And again, these are all things that previous papers hadn't done up until this time, which is why we argue that this is important. This is something, again, this would not be helpful at all in epidemiology. May not be as helpful now, but it was helpful 10 years ago in social work, which is an argument, which is here's a person who does using major data sets, and they haven't relied on one data set, but they've done a lot of stuff with a lot of different data sets. I was working with a young scholar who's in our psych department, and as they drafted their third year review and they put tables in, the chair of the department really hated all tables. And whereas in social work now, we love tables because, it's like tenure statements, like everything should catch up at the times. If you look at a tenure statement that doesn't have any tables or other information, you can go back 100 years, 1924, and you'll see the same type of statement. And so we're trying to advance things. But again, that's why you have to know your unit. This is instead of just sort of saying what your citations are, you can put them in a table. And the table is really small. We're not talking about a page table. We're talking about a little thing in a corner, okay? That shows you. And again, the cumulative citation count as an example is a good way to do this. Same way, this is if you notice here, these are the ratings of the courses. Instead of just sort of writing it out, just putting it in a table. And this line is important because it says this is how much the students want to take the course, and this is how much they actually enjoyed the course. So it shows that they enjoyed it more than they thought they would. As I said, depends on your unit. We found this helpful. Instead of saying I've reviewed for a lot of journals, say, okay, and then it gives you the tier, the level of journals that you're reviewing for. Again, a small table. You don't want too many cooks. This is a really important thing. You want others to review it, but again, you have to own it. So let me explain what I mean here. You can have, again, I'm gonna use the cooking analogy. Okay. So the first thing is that academia is an art. It's not a science. Okay, which is why we're talking about this. If science be easy, you do A, B, C, and D, and it'll work. That's what science is. And art is a little different. So academia, and when in terms of cooking, is a lot more like cooking as opposed to baking. Baking is a science. If you don't do it right, that souffle will not rise. Okay, pure and simple. It's a science. However, with cooking, you can have a great uh, Ethiopian dish. You can have a great Italian dish. You can have a great Chinese dish. Okay, and we know a lot of people cook without recipes. They just know what they're sort of doing. That's the reason it's an art. Okay, why don't you want too many people? Why don't you want too many cooks? Well, you put together a French meal, a Japanese meal, and a hamburger, and you put that all together on one plate, and all you end up with is garbage. Okay. Whereas you can have a really good French meal, a really good Italian meal, and a really good Japanese meal. So again, you don't want too many cooks. You want it because people come to it with different ideas. You have to own it. So every unit is different. So a lot of places have a tenure and promotion committee. They're the ones who sort of send everything out, and then the exec committee and the tenure. Then they deal with it. Then it goes to your whatever exec committee you have, and then depending on the place, here in Michigan, if you are say in the sociology department, then it would go to the arts and sciences dean. But if you're in a school like public health or social work is the school itself, then it goes straight to the provost. Now, congratulations, you received tenure. We're very happy for you. And Brianna will even sing you a bottle of champagne. See, I've already put her on the hook for that. To a full professor. So, Getting a tenure track job obviously means you have potential. Tenure, you've arrived. For a professor, now you're a leader in the field, and that's the assumption. You're a leader in the field. So these are some mistakes that I've seen um, um, a lot. Okay. One is people get tenure and they change their research areas. And these are people who they may eventually get full, but it may take them, instead of 6 years, it may take them 10 years, 12 years, or they may not ever get full professor. People who slow down their research. People who start new but extremely time-consuming projects. It's okay to have some time-consuming. It's a matter of how much time. Um, Working as if you already are a full professor. Again, you try not to change research areas. You try to work close to the same pace, but not necessarily totally the same pace, okay? You can slow down some. Part of it, you'll be forced to slow down. And there may be family obligations that you've been able to ignore a teeny bit earlier that you definitely do not want to ignore now, okay? Because you don't have to ignore now. At this point, you're really seeing where quality papers mean a bigger difference than before. And you obviously, this is always the case. You never publish a paper that's going to embarrass you at any level. However, you can, once you get full professor, then you can truly do what you want to do. Okay, then it's a bit different. You want to go for full in 6 or 7 years. Every year after 7 year makes it a little tougher to get full. You go, wow, why is that? So it's because expectations increase every year. And that's just sort of the nature of academia. Now, people have adjusted to that in various ways, but the expectations seem to just keep on increasing. But again, this is my last point here. Be ready to leave. The threat of leaving is your most valuable leverage that you will ever have in academia. And yeah, that is my presentation.